Thank you, everybody, for coming to the Aaron Torres Podcast YouTube page. I do have one quick favor before we get to the video that you came here for, and that is very simply this. You see that little red subscribe button below this video? Go ahead, smash that subscribe button. It really does help me. It really does help this channel grow and my audience grow. So go ahead and hit that red subscribe button. And now, here is the video that you came here for. All right, everybody. I am back. Good to be back. I want to continue the conversation on college basketball. And let me just say this. I know I say it all the time, but April has just become a fascinating month in college basketball. And, I think our parents and our grandparents kind of think of, okay, college basketball kind of ends in March. And I think the rest of us that really follow the sport and love it realize, no, it doesn't. Because April has become, as I call it, roster turnover season, where there is so much going on in terms of what a roster is going to look like next year. You have guys declaring for the draft. You have guys declaring for the draft without an agent. You have the transfer portal just going bananas. But you also have a few high school players that for whatever reason are still available in the spring, whether they just haven't committed, whether the head coach they committed to is fired or leaves for another job or whatever. There's always a couple elite high school players that are available this time of year. Well, on Monday, one of the truly elite high school players remaining made his college decision. Malik Reneau, 6'8" forward, played at Montverde Academy this past season. He had been committed to Florida until Mike White decided to leave. Now he opens his recruitment and, drumroll please, on Monday, 5-star, power forward, Montverde Academy, Malik Reneau commits to the Indiana Hoosiers. My boy Mike Woodson. How about Mike Woodson? Mike effing Woodson. He does it again. Another 5-star for Indiana in what is now the best recruiting class in the Big Ten, one of the best recruiting classes nationally. And let me tell you this. You talk about the recruiting class they're bringing in with the returnees that they have, and oh, by the way, the possibility that they get back one more big name. Indiana's a fascinating team going into 2022, 2023, and one that, frankly, probably here on the national scale, we haven't talked about enough over these last couple weeks. First of all, in terms of Malik Reneau, just a really talented player. Like I said, 5-star, kind of emerged late in the process, commits to Florida. Doesn't get a ton of hype because he committed to Florida early, kind of stays committed to Florida, whatever. But you put the film on this kid, this kid's really good. Like I said, about 6'8", 6'9", can handle the ball a little bit, really probably best around the rim. In a lot of ways, ironically, he reminds me of, I don't know if you want to call him former Indiana Hoosier because he played last year testing the NBA draft waters. He reminds me a lot of Trace Jackson-Davis, who was an all Big Ten forward for Indiana last year, averaged 18 points, 8 rebounds. And oh, by the way, we're going to be talking about Trace Jackson-Davis here momentarily. But this kid is really, really, really good. And oh, by the way, he is part of what is quickly becoming a recruiting juggernaut at Indiana. As I said, Jalen Hood, they have 2 5-stars now. Jalen Hood-Schifino, who was a McDonald's All-American this year, is committed. Also, this kid, Malik Reneau. And I think it's also worth noting that this time last year, to Mike Woodson's credit, he went out and got Tamar Bates, a 5-star player who had been committed at the time to Texas and Shaka Smart. Shaka Smart leaves for Marquette, reopens his recruitment, this kid Tamar Bates, and he ends up at Indiana. And so I got to give, before we get into what this kid means to the program in Indiana and this and that and what do they look like for 2022, 2023, I just got to give Mike Woodson a lot of credit. Because if you go back to when he was hired, that's right, I'm the guy that was very critical of that hire. But at the same time, what did I also say? I said I didn't know if he was going to be able to recruit at the level needed to win at the highest levels of college basketball, let alone in the Big Ten. Well, right now, the only school that's really recruiting anything close to Indiana right now is the Michigan Wolverines, who obviously had a small recruiting class this year. Juwan Howard's done a great job with recruiting since he has gotten into Michigan. But I just bring it up to say, you look at the recruiting rankings right now, nobody's doing very much better than Indiana. Number 5 class nationally, I should mention, by the way, Ohio State has the number 6 class nationally, but number 5 class nationally for Indiana with this commitment, 2 5-star players, 3 5-star players signed over the last 2 recruiting classes. And look, at the end of the day, college basketball is about a lot of things, but it's also about talent. And Mike Woodson, to his credit, I didn't know if he was going to be able to recruit at this level. 3 5-stars over the last couple of years, very successful in the transfer portal. I give him credit. Part of it is him. Part of it is surrounding himself with smart people, retaining Kenya Hunter, the ace recruiter under Archie Miller. But he is doing an incredible job of navigating this new world of college basketball where players come, players go, players this, players that. And so I bring it up to say that when I start to look at Indiana next year, I'm just telling you right now, with this kid in the fold and what could be next, Indiana is a very fascinating team to look at for the 2022-2023 season. They did lose a few players in the portal, but to be honest, it was mostly players that you either, I don't want to say you didn't care about because that sounds disrespectful, but you probably knew was going to leave. And then on top of that, it kind of opened up scholarships for other guys that may be more impactful. You look at who they lost. They lost Rob Finney, I think a great leader, great talent. I wish him luck at his next stop, but he was playing in a very limited role by the end of the year. Parker Stewart kind of decides to move on. There's a couple other guys. Christian Lander, he didn't really work out. He was a 5-star coming in, but didn't really work out, both under Archie Miller for 1 year and then under Mike Woodson for 1 year. And so you start to clear out some scholarships, and now you look at who they have coming back. It's a really talented team. Coming off an NCAA tournament berth, first of all, Xavier Johnson's back. I love Xavier Johnson. I thought he was great down the stretch. Now, he was erratic early, did turn the ball over a little too much, played a little bit too fast. But over those last 2-3 weeks, I mean, when Indiana made its run in the Big Ten tournament, wins the play-in game, it was because Xavier Johnson had been awesome. He completely took over that Michigan game, leading them to the win that ultimately probably got them into the NCAA tournament. And I thought he was great late. On top of him, some of the other guys that are coming back, right now, Miller Kopp, it appears, is coming back, kind of a nice role player, shooter, this, that, the other thing. Jordan Geronimo, I think, is a guy a lot of people seem to think could be a potential breakout player, kind of a stretch 4, 3, kind of one of those guys, super athletic. He can play on the perimeter. He can play down low, but he's really talented. Trey Galloway, a good 3-point shooter. And then all of a sudden you look up, and oh, by the way, last week you get back Race Thompson, a key player for multiple years within this program, at times had dealt with all sorts of injuries, came back last year under Mike Woodson, and I thought had a really productive career. Now, to the thing with Race Thompson, he is limited in what he can do. He isn't very good more than 5-10 feet away from the basket, but 11 points, 7.5 rebounds, third on the team in scoring, second on the team in rebounds. So you're talking about, at minimum, 3 starters back with Xavier Johnson, who I thought was really good. And then on top of that, you also have Race Thompson and Miller Kopp. Now you're adding 2 5-stars. Malik Reneau's kind of that front court player, Jalen Hood-Schifino on the wing. That is a really, really, really interesting team that I think that alone, along with Tamar Bates, the 5-star from last year, I mean, I got to say, that's about a top 20 team nationally the way that I look at it. A returning point guard, a returning established big, returning shooting, returning kind of combo player in Jordan Geronimo. Now you have 2 5-star players, one kind of on the wing with Jalen Hood-Schifino, one down low with Malik Reneau. Tamar Bates, you hope, takes that next step. That is a top 15, top 20 team as far as I'm concerned. But here's where it gets very interesting, though. You know who else is starting to get buzz that he might come back? The best player on the roster last year, really the best player on the roster the last 3 years, Trayce Jackson-Davis. He's declared for the draft. He's testing the waters. But if you've watched Indiana, you know that while he's a great college basketball player, doesn't really have the skill set of the modern NBA. Still best around the rim. Still a guy that doesn't shoot the ball particularly well. Did not make a single 3-pointer all last season. And so while he went for 18 and 8 per game, doesn't project to be a great NBA player. And there's real buzz from Indiana. Loves being a Hoosier. Probably NIL is not going to be a bad thing for him. You talk about that, and I'm telling you, I think this becomes a very interesting scenario where we could see Trayce Jackson-Davis return to Indiana next year. And so, yeah, it creates a little bit of a logjam in the front court, but one, it gives Malik Renault time to kind of develop into the player he is. You're not throwing him into the fire. And then 2, you bring back Trayce Jackson-Davis, an all Big Ten player. You're talking about 4 starters back from an NCAA tournament team last year. And I'm telling you, I think Indiana's somewhere around the top 10 in the country coming in next year. Maybe top 15 if we're being kind of, don't want to put too much pressure on them or don't want to put too much too soon. But you have a team that played really well down the stretch, that finally got comfortable in its own skin, that finally learned how to win big games. And now you're returning 4 starters from that same team, and you're adding 2 top 25 players, 2 5-star prospects on top of the other guys that you hope develop, like Tamar Bates. I'm not saying But I'm just saying, that is a very interesting team that I am very excited about. And I will say this, even without Trace Jackson Davis, the Indiana Hoosiers are a team that when I do my next updated top 25, they're definitely going to be in the top 20 and probably right in the mix with Michigan State as the best team in the Big Ten. You get back Trace Jackson Davis, we're talking about a team that is a potential top 10 team in the country and for sure, a team that is good enough to win the Big Ten in 2022-2023. If you enjoyed this video, do me a favor. Make sure to subscribe to the Aaron Torres Podcast YouTube page. Also, make sure you're following on social media at Aaron_Torres. Torres on Indiana for your full IU coverage and plenty more. Make sure you're subscribed to this page.